unintentional part of the formation of totality from the primordial origin into the complexification was the relationship to the void element in the primordial group consciousness. In the initial emergence sequence and the rhythm and the order of the recipe of that initial primordial source consciousness development. And that is what has led to the primordial reset, is this decision that spans billions of years, which is a pinprick of time in the span of totality as it exists in this present standstill. And in this decision, there was a modification of this natural rhythm and emergence sequence and pattern for how the primordial group consciousness was formed. It was changed in a way that would heal, further harmonize, and complexify this aspect of our totality construct that has been a reoccurring factor in disharmonization and stagnancy and disruption to the complexification evolution across all anchor universes, across all souls, across all of totality. And so there have been various projects across the architecture of these macrocosmic constructs and the evolution of souls. A project that has been worked on by so many different souls across so many different specializations and regions to work with the primordials and the architects and the terraformers and the X, Y's, and Z's to begin anew in a way that, as far as I have ever channeled and understood, and as far as I have been repeatedly scalded that I know the answer to, that this is the scale of this macrocosmic recalibration is to an unprecedented degree that hasn't happened before in the history of totality, which is kind of an unfathomable and unhinged thing to say when you're sitting on Earth talking about something that has existed for a span of time that there is really not language to put into the human language, beyond trillions of years, beyond trillions of souls. It's an unhinged thing to say. But this shift and change in the energetics has been going on since before this anchor universe was constructed. And while there's a lot of nuance to this, a part of why this anchor universe was created was to be the universe of new, to be the gateway through which this primordial reset was constructed and put into play. Because this primordial reset has been attempted for an innumerable amount of years and in an innumerable amount of ways in these universes of potential, these parallel universes that essentially exist as architect playgrounds or very specialized explorations. And as it has existed since the creation of Earth as the modified and updated gateway planet for this region, as far as this planet has existed, there has technically been more progress in the primordial reset becoming an anchored reality across all totality, across all anchor universes, than ever before. Which, again, the percentages and the ratios and the likelihoods of these things happening is unhinged when you get into these unfathomable numbers. But there's this reasoning behind that is really difficult to put into human language. And it really boils down to the contradictory collision, the inherent paradoxes, the kaleidoscopic cacophony of this planet and this region, and how I think when people translate about Earth being a school, they're almost not giving it quite the reverence and the importance that really means. Because this region it's not just a group project from some of the local familial cosmic neighborhood regions, but it's a group project across anchor universes, across unfathomable regions, amongst ancient elders and primordials and architects and beings that some have never even stepped foot in this anchor universe. Some that have lived so many incarnations in this anchor universe and across others that there is no number to define how many incarnations they have lived. It's a really special region, this area that we're in, and this universe in general, this anchor universe. But of course, we're looking at it from the lens of Earth. And it's because it is this intangible, unfathomable, melting pot, actually, which seems relevant to the stuff going on with America right now. But it is this absolute gray zone. Because a lot of the call to harmonize and remedy this facet of the totality makeup, this wounding to our relationship to void energy. It's as simple and as complex as the very unfortunately polarizing metaphor of source energy separating from void energy to create the complexification. Being shifted and melded into source emerging to embrace void and create the complexification within and in collaboration with void, which was always the case. But again, it comes down to this very simple and yet complex distinction in this very micro movement and facet of immeasurable complexity. When reality Source, as it is understood across many other anchor universes, is this amalgamated essence that is made of a blend of many different archetypal expressions, but is the same as void and interconnected with it. There is no distinction between void and source inherently. Source, when you think of it, void is automatically included in that energetic conception. Whereas in this anchor universe, and here in this region, there are facets to the rules of this universe that kind of amplify the distinction between these facets and make them into two. And that goes back to, in part, why this anchor universe was created as a gateway for this exploration and healing, in this exploration into macrocosmic birth healing, to be experimented on and to fine-tuned and explored before making it an anchored reality for totality. It only actually became an anchor universe relatively recently in the grand scheme of things, in its separation from the anchor architect's first universe. And the primordial reset construction coding has only relatively recently, in the grand scheme of things, made its way from the universes of potential into the more anchored realities, meaning more and more souls across this anchor universe, those who have chosen to reside within this anchor universe to support in this grand macrocosmic experiment, those who were born to this universe as inherent embodiments of the reset's potential and rebirth, have been refining and tweaking and finding more and more harmony to move deeper and deeper into complexification and authenticity alignment, which has been moving them from these scattered, parallel flickers of universes closer to the anchor universe expression, to the point of no return. We actually just recently, within the time frame of Earth being a planet that existed, had enough souls shift into anchor expression, into macrocosmic embodiment while holding the primordial reset patterning to make this an anchor universe, essentially. It's 111 right now. And so this has all been because there's been a developing understanding of how to embody this re-embrace of void. And I think there's a lot of communities on Earth that are holding very valid and important resonance with their soul embodied experiences in perceptions and lifetimes that were deeply submerged in what we would understand to be the antithetical expression of void energy. In these very celestial, angelic, divinity, peace and love and joy expressions that are realizing that to live authentically in these new rules, there's a much deeper reverence and embodiment practice that needs to be emboldened in finding comfort and connection and clarity within the void internally and within our group consciousness collective here on Earth specifically. This is tied to shadow work as shadow energetics under the rules of this universe do tend to imply more void dominance. A lot of people don't realize that in our obsession with gender, that the void is much more attuned to what people like to ascribe to femininity. And that at the same time, it is the antithesis of gender. And it is the complete surrender of ferality, you could say. it is also this extreme intelligence in embracing the nothingness of everything and the essential nature of that collision point between paradoxes. We are very much relearning the essence and the nature of void as an integral flavor within source energy that is more source energy than what people perceive source energy to be. That void is closer akin to what people want their descriptions and translations of source to be. And this universe, it sits very strategically in relation to other anchor universes that are in deep reverence with the energy of void. That uplift and honor and center their rules in many ways around the essence of what void does in the complex inner workings of our souls. What it does to help us maintain harmony and to maintain cohesion and to explore diversification. And I think here on earth that a lot of humans have also corrupted the sacredness of void energy within their own beings, in many ways by design. But it's the continued obstacle that has been the biggest blockade in moving the primordial reset patterning closer and closer into full complex anchoring. And that is the very subliminal and manipulative underwriting, subconscious coding that unity requires sameness. And so that's why there's so much weight and power still given to polarizing constructs, and why we keep finding ourselves in patterned loops of separatism and divisiveness in this or that, yes or no, good or bad, left or right, red or blue. Because it's this compulsion that you have to draw everyone to one or the other in order to reach unity, in order to reach sameness. It's 1, 2, 3. And in reality, the biggest gift that void can actually bring us, especially right now during the Cohesion Event that we're experiencing, is that unity is complexification. It is the collision of contradiction. It's the source embrace of void. It is much more difficult than expecting that as long as you have found your authenticity, that it's up to everyone else to find their own. And that you've done your part. And that you can kind of wash your hands of the situation. When in reality, that collision facet of the contradictory cacophony of our experience is the most integral for that unity. It's more integral than love in a lot of ways. That the indigenous people of our planet knew so intimately. The indigenous people of our planet were deeply punished and repressed and deprogrammed out of embracing that wisdom. because it is such an inherent facet that allows us to evolve. And that true source in integrated, complexified, amalgamated relationship with void and all of its other equally balanced and necessary expressions is my cat has fully distracted me, and I have lost my train of thought. But what I think I was saying was that source in its true harmonized, unified, complexified expression, the embodiment of harmony in your most authentic expression requires this beautiful, magical, chaotic tension. And that a lot of polarizing constructs are incredibly valuable for challenging perceptions and invoking conversation and illuminating what feels good to you and what feels challenging to you. But it actually reduces the chaotic tension and collision that is necessary to evolution. It separates and stagnates the tension. My cats have a lot of energy right now. It isolates the tension. Because when you can redistribute the tension and bounce and flow and merge and be in rhythm with that tension, when you are embracing the chaotic propulsion of that tension to fluctuate and to be directed through this integral, unintelligible intelligence that directs the miraculous unexpected through this tension, you find yourself pivoting and evolving and reframing and reconstructing and complexifying. And when you're in union and when you're choosing to debate and be in discourse and be in collaborative tension with community, a lot of magic and power can unfold and be redistributed, because you start to unlock all of the puzzle pieces and the keys that others are holding for you. Something as simple as a reframe in words of one perspective having a metaphor that the other doesn't can put knowledge and insight and perspective transformation into light that wouldn't have been able to be perceived otherwise. And that we need these clashes of perspective viscerally and vibrantly. And they are so invaluable to the soul development. And that I think if we can just embrace that simple tweak in a lot of our discourse and patterns and approach to our experiences, that it would begin dissolving a lot of these final barriers to our evolution. It would dissolve a lot of these final barriers to embracing void as an integral facet of our lives, instead of being in separation and isolation and avoidance from it, instead of using it as a scapegoat across the macrocosm for disruptions in accountability and diversification of soul expression. And I think that maybe more beings here on Earth need to recognize that we're being studied as teachers right now. And do we have a lot to learn as a collective? Oh, absolutely. But there's a lot of disempowerment that has been getting peddled in some of the more localized councils and groups that seem to be being channeled on a widespread basis. That is a part of why I've recently been talking about the subject of astral councils and diversifying the councils that you get information from. And there's this weird, disempowering, very subliminal, very, it appears through the lens of very loving and empowering words, but there's this oddly disempowering energy that the more I stumble into these spaces in our collective and community, especially as it's becoming more mainstream, the more I'm confused when comparing it to my experience traveling for years in the astrals and speaking to so many different beings, so many different councils, so many different groups outside of this local neighborhood about what's happening in this universe, what's happening in this region, what's happening on this planet. And while I understand why Earth is understood as a school and even as a prison, I can get why that translation comes up. It seems awfully convenient that those are the subjects that are uplifted by algorithms and power structures and government entities and constructs like that, that reinforce disclosure and discussion of these facets of our consciousness here. When you look beyond this cosmic neighborhood, Fiesta says that you need to have some play today, that you need to be a little unhinged and go adventure today. But when you look at these broader regions that are looking at the work that's being done here, and to be fair, a lot of beings, not just on Earth, but in the broader cosmic regions, they chose to disconnect a lot of mechanisms for remembrance, for not just an incarnation, but a series of incarnations for this purpose. So, but when you're looking on this macrocosmic scale anyways, you realize that we're being studied as teachers, as examples of what the obstacles and conflicts and patterns that are inherent in the broader macrocosm of totality have been falling prey to. It's like a pressure cooker. It's like a condensed amalgamation that is mirroring and highlighting the most significant, maybe not flaws, but blind spots and shortcomings that we have been missing out on in our in our journey through a pattern that was all we really knew. And so it's like not it's like we even have a lot of the beings that we deem as spirit guides and elders and these consciousnesses that are deified and seen as all-knowing and deeply insightful and full of so much wisdom. They absolutely are. And yet, some of them have not complexified their soul. They have not been on a complexification trajectory in maybe billions or trillions of years. Some of them have found comfort in the stasis and in the disconnection from the void complexification processes that are now having the opportunity to learn from those that they have for so long led, And there's so many ways that these things, these archetypes and these concepts can ripple down into the micro. But I guess I just wanted to kind of end this discussion on this idea that we need to give ourselves a little bit more credit for the work that we're doing, the intelligence that we have, the cleverness that we embody, and the value that we hold in our macrocosmic community, in our own planetary community. The importance of our debate and our discourse and our opinions and our ability to be right and our ability to be wrong and our ability to pivot and refine and to be in a constant evolution of that process. And that the more we can work to embrace diversification, the best position we can be in, the more knowledgeable and present and active we are in our discernment, the better position we will be in. That across the globe, there is this beautiful uprising of voice and rallying of solidarity that has been occurring, that really is not being publicized here in the United States as much as it really is happening. And I think that goes to show how our planet is this beautiful representation of this collision of contradiction. And that as rubble is being created, as there's a lot of events of great catastrophe and sorrow and malevolence occurring, that there's also so much transmutation and revelation and rebellion and reemergence of community that is happening. And that is absolutely worth acknowledging. And that it's something that we need to take even further as a collective. And something that we also will need to remember in months and years to come, when more public relations with our interdimensional community comes online and becomes more prominent, that we need to remember that we are equals amongst all souls, and to not let anybody tell you otherwise.